Let's talk about sperm,
It's
baby.
like the truth about fertility, the truth about
The truth about fertility. I love it. We are still putting the most pressure, the most resources, responsibility on women. It's 2025 and this is still
it
happening.
takes two to tango. So 50% of the cases are likely on the men.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Shut Up and Heal podcast. I'm your host, Dr. D. Some of you may know me as your ancestral healing coach. Others as the founder of a wellness tech company. And for some, I'm just your good old sis. On this podcast, we talk about a lot of things complementary and alternative wellness, and we even dig into taboo around things with health, wellness, and healing. We are sponsored and featuring Amarize practitioners and strategic partners. Amarize is a one stop shop for what you need when it comes to holistic wellness. We match you to practitioners, the right modality, and the right practitioner at the right time in your journey, ensuring that you get the care that you need when you need it. And the great thing about it is Amarize adapts with you throughout the journey. And today we are joined by one of our dope strategic partners. I don't even know how, because we met almost a year ago at this point in Portugal. Simone is absolutely amazing. We revisited again. I think we met in Qatar earlier this year. But I am joined today by Professor Simone, world leading expert in male fertility, research chair at the University of East Anglia, and co-founder of Fertilitas Labs, a company developing groundbreaking at-home tests that gives you a complete view of male reproductive health in just minutes. So we're not talking about like sometimes a 2, 3 week, even month wait. We're talking about in minutes. Now, with infertility on the rise, we are still putting the most pressure, the most resources, responsibility on women. It's 2025 and this is still happening, even though a significant portion of fertility and pregnancy challenges come from male factors. Now, Simone is working on changing that along with her co founder and her amazing team. She's leading the science of everything, disrupting the narrative and opening doors for a much needed conversation. So today, and I don't know, are we making history again? It's 2025. It's two women. We're talking about male fertility. Interesting, but let's go. Simone, I've opened the floor to you.
Thank you, Jumebi. I'm really excited to be here today. We have had a few chats already about this topic, and I think it is, as you said rightly, it is a topic that is that needs more attention. Male fertility is kind of, 1 in 6 people worldwide is currently encountering issues with fertility, and arguably it takes two to tango. So 50% of the cases are likely on the men's side. And when we talk to people, there is a lot of services and diagnostics and interventions for women available, and men somehow just don't get considered or only at the last moment. And I think that's what we're trying to change, really.
And I absolutely love this. So let's kind of get started with the root of everything here, because you've dedicated your life to genetics and reproduction, specifically male fertility. What drew you in, and did you see something that may have been looked over?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I think it was a little bit by chance, but I did a master's in Italy on. I started out as an evolutionary biologist, so I was a fundamental scientist. I was interested in science and answering questions, scientific questions, and had very little to do with entrepreneurial journeys. And I started working in Italy on a marine fish species and the mating system in that fish, and one led to the other. And when I came to the University of East Anglia, that is when there was one particular question that really drove me, which was very much to understand when an egg being fertilized by one sperm, which sperm is it actually that fertilizes the egg? So that's the kind of the question that has driven my research for a very long time, because we know so very little about male reproduction, male fertility processes, and molecular processes, everything. So I was just driven by that particular question. And it was in 2020, when I spoke to an entrepreneur in residence at the University of East Anglia, his name is David Dent, and he said, you know, your research sounds quite applied. And I said, well, it is. And I have been playing with this idea of, you know, maybe translating some of our ideas into a more commercial side, but I haven't really taken the step yet. And he said, I think this is the moment now. And I think that's when I started thinking about, okay, let's maybe translate what we know so far and make it available for people now, instead of, you know, just publishing it into a scientific journal and hope for the best that someone over the next 20 years or so will discover this story and will make use of the knowledge. Why don't we do it ourselves? And I think that's how it all starts.
I love this. Now, Dr. Simone, I feel like a lot of people are not as well versed on maybe the sperm analysis in general and what traditional sperm analysis tests for and some of the metrics and how they, come up with that, the what is normal, maybe what's not normal. I know a bit more about what you all do, but I'm so curious if you can kind of talk about the game-changing difference in your test versus a lot of the tests that are just, that you find at fertility shops or centers around the area.
Yeah. So when a clinician is approached, what they will look at is they will look at the number of sperm that are in a sample and how motile they are, and they will look at how normal they look. And the way they do that is by looking down a microscope. So it is a trained clinician or embryologist or other lab member that will know how to look down at these samples and identify potential abnormalities. And they follow strict guidelines that are issued by the WHO. So it is something, you know, that there's a lot of data out there that indicates what is normal and what is potentially causing issues when trying to conceive. And the clinicians mainly assess the threshold of these particular values and try to find any potential aspects that might be suboptimal and that could potentially also be improved. And for that, men have to go and see a clinician, you know, talk to someone and produce a sample, potentially in a clinic itself as well, which is all understandably not ideal and often a bit uncomfortable. And when we looked into, you know, generally what's available on the male fertility market, we realized there is pretty much nothing out there. You know, if somebody goes into a pharmacy and looks for something to test their sperm quality at home, there's a couple of test kits. And then there are a couple of services that offer for samples to be sent into the lab, and people can do that as well. But there is always risks and nothing is quite accurate enough. So you will get some sort of a result, but it may not necessarily be the result, you know, that will give you a firm answer. And what we're doing is we developed this kit that is really meant for people to use at home in their comfort of their own four walls. They can choose the time they want to be in and they can choose whenever they want to do it. Don't have to talk to anyone about it. They can use an app to interpret test results. So there is a lot of comfort around it and no sharing of any information should they not want to. Should they want to talk to someone, then we're still there. So then we will, you know, happily be contacted and listen to what people have to tell us. So it is really a test that will look at not just numbers. We will also look at other parameters that will tell us very generally about male health as such, because health and fertility are very strongly correlated with each other. They can get the results within 15 minutes. They will get a quite complete set of information from that test. And it really help, you know, it is meant for people to find out about themselves without having to share. But then if they feel they need some further support, that is when we can also offer some follow-up steps and advise them what to do next. So we would not just leave them with their own results, but just let them, you know, guide them through the further steps as well.
You said 15 minutes. I remember when you told me that, my heart stopped because I'm like, okay, at least here, because I know you're in England or the UK, and over here in the US, it's like when you get a sperm analysis done, oftentimes it takes 1 to 3 weeks for you to get results.
Yeah.
And the results, and just I come from not being a specialist in the reproductive health like you. I come from a general sense of like more alternative wellness, specifically looking at things as it relates ancestrally or environmental factors that can affect. And what I've noticed is like, okay, one, that wait period is daunting. Why is it taking 1, 2, 3, sometimes even 4 weeks to get these results back?
Yeah.
And then when you get the results back, what I've noticed is the range for what is normal is so vast. And it's not necessarily catered to the individual more. And there's not really much talked about the follow up is horrible. There's not much. So it's like, okay, well, this is abnormal. What do I do? Then the general advice is more like, well, don't drink alcohol as much, don't smoke, increase cardio, take these vitamins. And that's kind of it. But there's no real like conversation happening about this. And also a lot of the what is considered normal can be very, very low. So like the normal range makes it so almost all men or those who have sperm are able to be normal. So then if 95, 98% of male are normal, then why would there be so much around? And I'm going to say it's beyond infertility. We're talking about the complications that come with pregnancy. Because from a holistic sense, what we look at is a lot of the symptoms that you have during your pregnancy, even things like preeclampsia, are factors due to the male health and the reproductive health of the male. So those are such big factors to only have, quote, 5-ish% be abnormal. Simone, Dr. Simone, Professor Simone, the math is not mathing. And I would love to just even get some of your point of view because, I mean,
Yeah, that's exactly the point. And that's why we need to look at a little bit more than just, how many sperm are in a sample. It is not just about numbers, it is about how well they swim, and if there are other aspects that are, potentially alarming, such as underlying inflammations or infections, obstructions. So our test can tell the user a little bit more about where the potential problem could actually lie. So it will more reliably detect a potential issue. So, when you take a test and just see, okay, my sperm number is perfect, so, there's nothing I need to worry about. But it could be that there is a lot of sperm in that sample, but they are all not moving, or moving for, not enough. So it is all about the combination of all the aspects. And the test that we're developing can tell you already where the potential issue could be. In most cases, it is not something, severe as in genetics. So most infertility cases have nothing to do. It could just be a simple, lifestyle change, being aware that hot baths are not great, for example, or cycling, simple everyday habits that people have that we know are not great for fertility, for male fertility. We could just guide people through that. So we will also have a survey where people can fill some questions and give us some general information about their, as we said, daily habits, potential medical conditions that they may be facing. And that will help us to put together a profile of that particular person and understand whether this is something that we can potentially try to deal with, as you said, with some supplements, or whether it is actually a more serious case. And then we would definitely refer them to a clinician and, have a proper follow-up check there as well.
for sure. And just the power in that. And I was talking to your co-founder, and we kind of discussed a bit more about the analysis part too, and how you all are able to dig deeper into some tests that are not standard when it comes to a lot of fertility centers and what they do for the sperm. And based on the results, like if it's showing X, okay, we need to further have a test done for these other different things that's not typical. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because for me, I feel like that is so unique and there's so much power. So please talk to us more about that.
So what we are looking at is the overall volume. We're looking at the sperm number. We're looking at the how well they swim, the sperm. We look at potential signs for infection and obstruction. So these are all parameters that we will look at, but clinics generally don't look at. So what clinics look at, they look at numbers, motility, so how well they swim, and they look for something called round cells, which is just everything that is not the sperm in the sample. And that can be pretty much anything and is not particularly informative. And the way it is done, it is really just a quick look down the microscope and a rough percentage of what we see. And most other things are not looked at an early stage. Knowing more about aspects that are not only just the sperm, but the more general health of the man. As we said, an infection coming through, if you've just been, catching a flu, that can have an impact. Anything really. So there is a lot of things that we can change. And I think men should know about that and have, the information that they need to help themselves, basically, without having to go to a very expensive clinical visit.
For sure. I agree. And then that very expensive clinical visit is a thing for sure. And on top of that, I think there's just a lot of silence around male infertility.
Exactly.
And the fertility options that we have that are, well, let me not just say that we have, the ones that are mainstream, because there are a lot more options. The ones that are seen to be popular these days, the IUIs, the IVFs, and things are very, 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 very hard on the woman. So I'm just curious, in your experience, what are some of like the social and emotional costs of this silence around male infertility? And this is, you can take any perspective or all perspectives, individuals, couples, or even communities.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I think, before we started this whole thing, I thought that men would generally be very hesitant to talk about any of their potential issues or any aspects of their fertility, because it is they're generally quite proud, and it is a very strong part of who they are. And now that we're in the middle of it, and we're talking to a lot of people, we're talking to a lot of people from all walks of life. And what we realize is that often, spontaneously, suddenly somebody says, I've been in that situation and I wish we would have had this test available. And often there are men. So what I realize is actually that men they would actually quite like to be involved in all this. They would like to have more opportunities to help themselves and maybe understand themselves a bit more, because I just think we're misunderstanding it a little bit. And then I also thought it could be a cultural issue, so maybe in some countries this is true, but not in others. But as you just pointed out at the beginning of this podcast, we've been traveling quite a bit. We've been in Europe, we've been in the Middle East. Everywhere we've had people approaching us and wanting to talk about their personal journeys as well. So it was really eye-opening to understand that this is not something that is limited to certain societies or certain men. It is actually a global, it's a global willingness of men to want to understand themselves. Maybe, yes, in the comfort of their own home, maybe not having to talk to everybody about it. And if you don't want, some people are more outgoing and they will happily share their journeys, and the others aren't. So for those who aren't, this is the test. And obviously for those who are, it's also the test, because it is affordable. You can do it whenever you want. You don't have to wait for anyone. There is no health system that is preventing you from getting your results. There is no financial issues that is preventing you from getting the results. I think it is a fundamental right of everyone in principle to have this information and gain this information for themselves.
Yes, I love how you said it. And so it's interesting because both of us, we exhibited, pitch, chased, and everything in a few different countries together. And we're always like by each other. And when we first met in Portugal last year, we were close to each other. And how I actually even found out, even though we were close, we're going, going, going. We're talking to hundreds, thousands of people a day. So how I actually found out about you, you were a few stairs down, is because somebody had just spoken to you and then came to my booth. And then they were like, hey, do you have alternative and complementary practitioners in your marketplace that help with male fertility? And I'm like, yes, but it's also interesting because that's not a question that we get as often. Female fertility all the time, but male, that was really target. And I'm just like, yeah. So in this conversation we had, they were wondering essentially, like, I get the results back. Like they've had some tests done and, kind of talked in depth a little bit about some of the stuff that they were facing. And they were asking, like, if they could use our system to be able to have practitioners that help on a holistic sense better understand, like, what is going on and also like how he can really support because he and his wife had been trying for like 5+ years at that point,
That's
and
it.
they did not want to go and do another round of IVF because it was very hard on the wife. And they came to find out, I think it was after the IVF journey, they came to find out that the infertility was due to him and what he has going on. And all this to say, that was when I was like, who is this? Who are these people here? And what are they doing? Because one, I'm in love. And second, it's like I have people to send you. And I'm sure just like he came to us, there are people that are like, hey, what are some alternative routes that I could go to? Because a lot of this, and then this is the holistic perspective, is very much emotionally triggered. Like we know how much stress emotions have to do with fertility and reproduction to like all of the reproductive health in general. So if you get support in that realm and you get support where you're able to use different herbs or different practices to be able to balance and improve your sperm health, your mental, your emotional, your physical health, that can be a complete game changer. And I think something that we've talked about a lot is that the hard part about the fertility aspect is even when the male fertility is a struggle, the woman ends up paying for it. Because I know we talked about the miscarriages pieces, and I wanted to kind of revisit this because you had said about the percentage of miscarriages that you do your research and things feel is a factor due to male fertility. Could you kind of talk about that part? We want to hear.
Yeah. So there is, I think miscarriages is a really interesting topic because people think that it is something that is quite unusual and happens rarely. But the truth is that quite a large number of fertilized eggs never even make it to the stage where you would even you recognize that you're pregnant. So I think, miscarriages at the very, very early stages are fairly common. And it is partly a kind of a quality check. So, the body and checks how well the embryo is growing. But the embryo is checking how well it is growing. If it is strong enough, it will implant and it will carry on. And then you have a fraction of those, fertilized eggs that will implant, but then there could be still potential problems that can occur later down the line, just because there are aspects that are just not as healthy as they should be. And then it is again a spontaneous reaction of the whole system to say, this is not going well, we better abort here and move on. And I think it is also key to understand that it is not just, on the women's side, it's the quality of the sperm contributes just as much to the health of the embryo. So there is a lot that sperm bring into the embryo apart from just the genes. It's a lot more information than just the genes that will have an effect on the embryo as well in these early stages. And so it is a very complex process, these early stages anyway. And everything should go according to plan. And if it doesn't, it will be aborted. And I think it is key for everyone to understand that it is just not unusual. It's actually very, very common. And I think that's when people, for example, trying for IVF, the success rates there are often not very high, but they're probably also partially not high because of the same reasons. Something is not quite right and it just doesn't work. And I think that's what we need to understand, that this is all nature. Nature takes its shape. It happens everywhere in nature, anywhere. We're not special in that way. Miscarriages happen everywhere. And I think making it a topic would help so much more to just understand that it is just part of life. It is part of life, just as we eat and sleep. So I think it is just something that is often very hard to deal with. But I also think that there is this stigma that people feel there is around this, it's almost like a personal failure, which it shouldn't be seen as at all, because it is just, it is part of life.
I love how you said that because you're right. Most of us miscarry regularly without even noticing it. And it is the natural selection thing. It is nature. Is it hard and can it be hard? Absolutely. But then I think that is such a key piece of miscarrying does not mean something is wrong with you. It actually means the opposite. It means that something is so right happening because your body is able to say, okay, this is not going to survive. Well, this is whatever not. and filter that out well. And I think that's a big thing, especially for women, and sometimes how hard it is on the body going through a miscarriage, how hard it is on the spirit going through a miscarriage, that we need to learn and remind and just like, in a sense, remember to give gratitude to our body and like, you did that. You did that. And we honor you. We thank you. Now, as things continue to improve, my health, all of that, their sperm, all of that, we will select, the body will know what to select well. And I think this is a big factor to think about of like women, there's a factor we play for sure. We know it, we feel it. Men, that is a huge factor because the woman's eggs have been in her body forever. So her body understands how to regulate and do that. Now, your sperm is more of the foreign species in that. No matter how long you've been together, and a lot of times the lack of connection is because of the sperm, not necessarily because of the egg. It's not,
Exactly.
of course, we know the egg still plays a factor, but we have to realize, and just on a very logical sense, look like what is the foreign entity in the body and why would it be fighting this foreign entity? Or why is it not connected with this foreign entity well? Can we look more at this foreign entity to see how do we improve this?
Yeah, exactly. It's actually a good point. I think there is also this, discussion around women becoming mums later and later in life, and how women's age obviously doesn't necessarily help the situation. It is true that women, hit a barrier at some point when they enter perimenopause, but men do the same. There is men also go through hormonal changes and their body also ages and their sperm quality also deteriorates, maybe not as sudden and as visible as in women, but it is a gradual decline over time. And I think it is likely a combination of the two. So it's just both play their roles in all this, understanding that it is just not always only the woman's fault, let's put it that way, or the woman's responsibility, but actually the father has just as much to say. I think is really, really important. And it's not about, pushing the blame one way or the other. It is more just to understand that it is something that is naturally determined, and some things we can't change. So I think it is just, yeah.
I Yes, no, I agree. That's the circle of life. It's hard. It's like when we think about the healthy baby, healthy pregnancy,
Yeah.
ladies, like, continue to do your thing. Fellas, that healthy pregnancy weighs a lot on your health too. So no, I think, yes, this is what we need to hear. So I am also curious from your perspective. There are systems within healthcare and even bringing it niche down more in fertility, reproductive, male reproductive, but taking a larger view, like a 10,000-foot view here, from your perspective, how do the broader system and this is, the patriarchy, the capitalist societies, the governments, the medical biases shape what we know or don't know about male reproductive health.
That's a very interesting question, of course. And I've been thinking about this a lot because there was quite a bit of attention recently and quite a push, to start including women's health in medical treatments more generally, and recognize that men and women are different when it comes to general health. And that the ones that are suffering most from, being underserved in medical systems are women. And yet, when it comes to fertility, the pattern is the opposite. So, it's all attention is on the women, and the men are, as we just said, even now, I hear stories from people who are going through this through treatments and diagnosis, and they often say that the man often says, I haven't been looked at, and it still amazes me, and especially because generally the focus is on men in medical treatments, but then when it comes to this, it's not. And I think it, as we said before, it is partly, a cultural issue. This is where our name comes. The virility, virility is the manlyhood. So that's where our company name comes from as well. It is an intrinsic value of men, and so I think men do feel very vulnerable in that area. So fertility is something that it's part of who they are. It's what we discussed before. And I think this is what society and culturally, has been shaping for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So it's not something that has happened over the past few years. It's something that has always existed. And that is why, that this is exactly, again, this cultural and historical positioning of where fertility lies. We have a lot of cultures, for example, in South America, we have the Mother Earth is she's Mother Earth because all the fertility comes from the mother. And obviously women do have a huge role when it comes to fertility because they carry the baby after all. But men do play a massive role as well. And I think it is high time that we start trying to change our way of thinking. And as I said before, the conversations that we've had with men at all stages and ages of their lives in all different settings around the globe, I realize that men do want to talk about this actually. So they do want to be included. And I think it is a good time now to give men a voice for one, and include them in the conversation, and also take the pressure off women a bit and just realize that let's just be a bit realistic here and maybe look at both sides at the same time.
I 100, I couldn't agree with that more. And it's certain because I've been doing a lot of thinking about this too. And it's like, especially just, the world that we're in today. And it's like, it could be so beautiful to see more men take power in their own reproductive health and more women take power in their own reproductive health. Because I think it's time to stop the control and the continual, like, I'm going to say scrutiny, political warfare when it comes to women's reproductive. And that energy can be so much better used when it comes to working on the male reproductive health. And when we talk about the infertility uh, that we're seeing, and there's so many factors, environmental for sure, the food we're eating for sure. There's also, and this comes from my perspective here, this other piece we need to look at and say, well, let's be for real here. If you have a whole gender here or gender identification classification that has not had to focus on their reproductive health for so many generations, what do you think would happen? Because it's this whole two to tango thing. So we're talking about so many generations here where the pressure has been put on the woman, where it wasn't too long ago before it finally became known to modern medicine that it's the gender is decided by the male, not the female. So there's so many things that for so long have not really been, I don't even want to say known, but I would say accepted is more of the thing. So I think there's a natural thing of, if forever it's just been blamed on one and there was nothing really done for generations, yeah. So maybe the lens of infertility, let's look at it a little differently and let's really acknowledge the fact that the space hasn't been created to address this part of the puzzle here. So now we create the space, release control of this part, take the space to understand this part, that the next generation can look a lot different. And maybe the infertility is not going to be looking the same.
Yeah, that's actually, I think it can be, I think sometimes, I think things can change quite quickly depending on how severe a situation is. I think it's obviously a very common example, but COVID showed how quickly people can change things, if they have to.
Yeah.
And I think with the fertility question and this rise in infertility globally, it will become more and more of a topic, or it has already become more and more of a topic. And I think that, as you say, I think people have started to change their thinking a little bit already. Maybe not everywhere, but I do think because family is such a big topic in everywhere, really, is realistically. I think it is something that will likely change quite quickly now as we, if this continues to rise further, it's more and more people. 1 in 6 is already quite a lot. So, there is a substantial section of the global population that is having these conversations. So I think it is it is a good time now to actually make people aware and help, maybe slowing down the further increase. And even if things have been, on one side, I do think for many, many generations, I still do think that if humans have to adapt, they can do this quite quickly. So if something becomes, really, really urgent, I think they can. And I think giving them the opportunity and the tools to do so, and I think knowledge, that's probably one of the most powerful things as well. If they know about the potential issues, that will already change quite a bit as well. So just making this a topic, that will already, change things a lot.
Professor Simone, I am loving how you're pointing this out several times. We are human and naturally we evolve and we can adapt actually rather quickly. And so much can change in one generation. So much can. So just us remembering that and us knowing that if we want to see positive change, we have the power and control to do the work so that we can see that change even in our own lifetime. I think we forget that. We rely so much on like, I don't know. It's so interesting because for us being in this era where it's like quick fix, do this, do that, do that, do that so quickly, we're really going about a lot of things the hardest way in such a way it's like this just makes everything worse. But if we give 10 years, things can change for hundreds of years. It's no, this could be a whole different conversation. As usual, I always love talking to you. And as we're kind of wrapping things up, is there anything that you wanted to share, any advice that you wanted to give, or another topic you wanted to touch on before we close out?
I think we've had a really nice conversation, and I think just, remembering again that it is a good time to talk about it now and to give everyone a voice in this, all include everyone in this journey of becoming parents. I think that's something that is something we're fighting for anyway. And I think in some places this may go, the opposite direction, but we are fighting for something that we really believe in. So I think, and we know that people want to be part of it. So I think I think that's what we discussed today mainly. So I think it will benefit both sides in the end if we change the
Oh,
conversation.
I think this has been done before. I'm still processing a lot of this because I'm telling you, 10-year-old me would never have seen this. What I understood even then as a child, I'm like, why does it seem like all the pressure is on women? It's like boys will be boys, and that was the end. I hope it's given other people a different perspective and a little bit of hope for where we're headed in the future. Because the work you're doing, I cannot tell you enough. And I've shared some personal stories with you and really dug deep.
Exactly. And I think it's just understanding that you're not the only one going through this, but there is actually a lot of other people out there as well. And I think the more we make this conversation a normal, coffee table conversation, the better it is, because then people feel more comfortable to just share and unload their, sorrows and troubles. And I think that's what this is all about.
Absolutely. Yes. Let's talk about Sperm, baby. I love it.
It's great. Yeah,
Thank
exactly.
you so much, Simone.
Yeah.
Professor, Dr. Lee, this has been amazing. For all of you listeners out there, any questions, let us know. And we will make sure we attach information to be able to contact the Fertility Gas Lab, be able to get your own. I know in the US, you're not here yet, but you're coming soon. Heavier in Europe at the moment, but I know they're always taking inquiries, questions, and great thing about being a startup is that there is ability to be a bit more flexible and adaptable to unique circumstances as well. Remember, Dr. Simone has such a great background in research and genetics, so much more. So I think there's more to the story than just the product, the amazing product that's being developed. And what I also love about what Dr. Daniel and Dr. Simone are doing is that they also understand the alternative and more integrative, holistic side of things and understand that as you're going through your own fertility journey, whether you be male, female, other, that there is space to look at things naturally as well and clinically, that it's a way to tango with both, that it's not one or the other. It's how we all dance and work together. And I could not be more grateful to have such amazing founders, such an amazing company in my strategic partnerships team, in my circle, in my community, because when I say we lean on each other when it comes to life, when it comes to our stories, when it comes to just feeling like you need to be heard. And I think one of the most beautiful things about what you were doing, and also what we're doing at Amrise, is that community aspect and knowing that it takes a village. It's not even just about being a child. It's like all through life. We are community-based humans, and we have to remember we're human before anything else. So thank you all for joining us. We'll chat to you soon, and don't forget that sometimes it's not about who do you blame. It's not about how do you destroy someone else's life because yours is not looking the way that you want it to be. It's about sometimes sitting a little quiet and just, you need to shut up and heal. It's okay to take some time. It's okay to pause. It's okay to heal, and it's okay not to know. So until next time, community, we'll chat with you soon. Bye. A few minutes on here because